This isn't anything fancy, it's just a YouTube intro accompanied by a black screen. Fernando Alonso's comeback to Formula 1 was almost a certainty when he left the sport back in 2018, at least for me. It was a when, not if, Fernando would return to the sport. A driver whose taste of the Indy 500 the year prior set up an amazing few years outside of Formula 1, seeing him compete in events such as the Dakar Rally, another shot at the 500, and of course the 24 Hours of Le Mans. His return in 2021, however, it's an unknown on how the 39-year-old Spaniard will compare in his first season back against his teammate Esteban Ocon, as well as the rest of the grid. Does the two-time world champion have what it takes, or will his return affect his legacy of being a ruthless, aggressive driver whose ability to outdrive underperforming cars was as popular with fans as his radio quips in rivalries with drivers such as Schumacher, Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel? I think it's a perfect opportunity to look at the comebacks of Michael Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen, two world champions whose comebacks are polar opposite of each other.
Take a look at the electric skills of home hero Fernando Alonso on some Spanish tarmac, up to 195 miles per hour, just a 6-speed.
For Michael, I think the prospect was pretty black and white. Brawn GP had won the World Championship that year, and the idea of Michael and Ross Brawn partnering each other again after the huge successes of which they had in the early 2000s, which of course led to Schumacher taking 5 of his 7 world titles with the Scuderia, now in a team that was led by Brawn and had won both world titles in its very first season in 2009, it all seemed like his 8th title was being handed to him on a silver platter. Plus, the idea of a German driver winning the title in a German car, it's pretty clear why Michael couldn't turn down this offer. But I remember Eddie Jordan's comments on BBC discussing with Jake Humphrey, David Coulthard and Martin Brundle about the move, and at the time it echoed how I was feeling as a 14-year-old hearing this news. He said, "You cannot possibly tell me at 41 that his body is able to keep up with the same level as a 25-year-old. He'll have the speed, but does he have the physical presence to maintain the challenge?" For me, Schumacher was the reason I started supporting Ferrari when I first got into Formula 1. When I first started watching Formula 1 in the middle of the 2008 season, as Massa and Hamilton were vying for the title, Schumacher had retired a year and a half before this, but growing up, I didn't really understand Formula 1, but everyone knew who Michael Schumacher was, and I was ecstatic to finally see him race in 2009 when the short-lived news broke that he would be stepping in to replace Massa. To finally see Schumacher race in 2010 was an exciting prospect, but obviously his return took a different path.
What they actually said was, "Fernando is faster than you. Can you confirm you understand this message?"
Schumacher qualified P7 at the 2010 Bahrain Grand Prix, 3 tenths off his teammate Nico Rosberg in 5th, with the Red Bull of Mark Webber separating them in 6th. He went on to finish just 4 seconds behind his fellow compatriot in 6th place in the race. Mercedes finished their first race P2 in the Constructors' Championship. But if you listen to Michael's first ever post-race interview on his return, I think it would go on to sum up how he really felt and how it would probably sum up his entire 3 years in the sport.
Just sort of go your pace and not do mistakes. Overtaking basically impossible other than somebody makes a mistake. Lewis had a little one, so Nico was able to pass him, got back past pit stop, and that's about it. I mean, that's the action we're going to have with, unfortunately, this kind of environment of race strategy.
As Schumacher would go through 2010 with a best finish of 4th place in Spain, Turkey and Korea, his teammate would go on to score 3 podiums in Malaysia, China and Britain. The fact that Schumacher failed to score a podium whilst Nico got 3, it showed the world that it wasn't just the car, and the fact that it was actually the Michael wasn't the same driver that we all used to remember. 2011 and 2012, Schumacher's highlights would go on to be a 3rd place at Europe after Hamilton and Maldonado's collision happened on the last lap. It would gift Michael his podium. Of course, his incredible pole position at the Monaco Grand Prix would be his highlight of his return within the sport, but he would ultimately lose that on a penalty of which he got in the Spanish Grand Prix the race prior when he collided with Bruno Senna. Schumacher would finish behind Rosberg in all 3 of the seasons with Mercedes, and by stats Michael would only outqualify Nico 17 times to him being outqualified 41. His head-to-head races, Schumacher again lost out with 22 times finishing ahead of Nico, but 35 times behind him. And most crucially, Rosberg took the first pole and win for Mercedes over Michael, a feat that I don't think anyone was expecting. This for me makes me sound like I'm kind of a Michael cynic, but I'm not. In my opinion, he's the 2nd greatest driver of all time behind Senna, in my personal opinion. I'm a Senna fan, but for me, there was a real possibility that Fernando Alonso could replace Rosberg with Ocon. The time that he's going to be running through this sport, it could affect the identity that he has as a driver. He needs to make sure that Ocon won't threaten him. Similarly to what Van Dorn was, if you look at that sort of season in 2018, I think that Alonso was obviously the greatest one within the team. He was the team leader, but if he comes back and gets beaten by Ocon the same way that Rosberg beat Michael, then it's just going to affect him negatively. It's going to affect his career negatively, just going to ruin everything that he's made throughout his career already.
So out.
Yep, they want him out of there. Now Alonso's not getting on with it. Only a minute and 40 to go. Is he blocking Hamilton here? Is that a bit of a tactic within...
The next driver to look at is the Iceman himself, Kimi Raikkonen. Now, Kimi's 2-year hiatus wasn't one that he actually chose for himself. He already had a 2-year contract for Ferrari going into 2010, but when Ferrari ironically signed Fernando Alonso during the 2009 season, Kimi had to look elsewhere for options. He was heavily linked behind the scenes to a move to McLaren in 2010 to partner Lewis Hamilton, but when Button was then signed by McLaren and Mercedes signed Michael Schumacher to partner Rosberg, his options were limited. Toyota actually entered negotiations with him in 2009, but it didn't come to fruition. He was meant to replace Timo Glock even before their decision to depart the sport. But Raikkonen cited that there were too many problems within that. They were not really able to afford him and he had no desire to join an uncompetitive team. What would follow would be some lackluster performances in the WRC and NASCAR before returning to the sport in 2012 with Lotus. The question being, could he do what Michael Schumacher failed to achieve, a win in his first season back? Now you have to remember that there was a different run-up between these two drivers. Unlike Michael, Kimi had already had a full season with these new regulations of cars, and at the time where Schumacher, who retired in 2006, when he came back to the sport in 2010, it was a whole new type of car to get used to. Kimi's debut saw him fight Sebastian Vettel and teammate Romain Grosjean for victory at Bahrain at just the 4th round, and he would go on to finish P2 that race. He would follow that up with a 3rd in Spain. Monaco and Canada saw him at the tail end of the points in 9th and 8th respectively before scoring another P2 finish at Europe, before eventually going on to score 3 podiums in a row with a 3rd in Germany, a 2nd in Hungary and a 3rd again at Belgium. With car development struggling in the latter half of the 2012 season, he would score points regularly, but with 2 5th places, 2 6th places and a 7th, it started to give off the vibe that Raikkonen's first victory in his return wasn't going to come. And then obviously we got to Abu Dhabi.
Bueno, impresionante. El coche de Fernando que se para en algún lugar de la pista, se baja del coche.
Heading into the 18th race of the season, Red Bull driver Sebastian Vettel led the Drivers' Championship with a 240-point lead ahead of championship rival Fernando Alonso on 227 points. And Kimi Raikkonen was actually in 3rd on 173. And for those who actually watched the race, if you remember, this was a season where the first 7 rounds had 7 different winners. It was an incredible season where McLaren had the fastest car, but was very unlucky with reliability, and that would lead to Lewis Hamilton's ultimate departure from the team. Fernando Alonso was pulling an underperforming Ferrari throughout the season to keep himself in the championship fight, and Vettel was just in incredible form. So as I just said, when you were watching this race, everything could have happened. It started to stagnate with Vettel and Fernando being the 2 people that were really up there, and obviously the McLarens vying as well. Romain Grosjean looked quite competitive in Japan, but it was mainly between the Ferrari, Red Bull and McLaren that were ultimately able to fight for victories. Vettel was actually on pole until he ran out of fuel on the in-lap of Abu Dhabi, and he was given a penalty that would force him to start at the back. He would eventually opt to start from the pit lane. Hamilton inherited first and Kimi was down in 4th. During the race, Lewis would lead from Kimi after coming up into 2nd within the first lap. And it would stay like this until lap 20 when Lewis retired with fuel pressure issues and Kimi would then say his famous line.
Okay, Kimi, next car behind you is Alonso. I'll keep you updated on the pace.
Just leave me alone, I know what to do.
Kimi would go on to be the 8th different winner of that season, and he would keep that momentum through to 2013, winning the first ever race of Australia. He would actually lead the championship up until round 5, scoring his first win in round 1, and after a 7th place finish at Malaysia, 3 consecutive 2nd places at China, Bahrain and Spain would prove ultimate for him. Once again though, the performance would drop off for Lotus and he would choose to walk away from the team without even completing the final 2 rounds of that season, after Lotus couldn't financially keep up with paying Kimi's contract. Raikkonen would then move to Ferrari for 2014 to partner the man that replaced him, Fernando Alonso. His first podium on his return, however, wouldn't come until 2015, and whilst he would score 3 podiums throughout that season, his new teammate, 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, would score an incredible 13 podiums and 3 victories that season. For me, this is when many people, including myself, probably felt that Kimi had lost his touch. Whilst Vettel wouldn't win a race in 2016, opportunities were there, such as Austria, in which the German would have almost had a certain victory before getting a puncture and retiring from that race. In 2017, however, the team improved amazingly, and Kimi would go on to take pole position at Monaco. In the race, however, the strategy led to Vettel being the favourite, and he would take the victory from Kimi in what many people, including Raikkonen, believed was the team trying to aid Vettel for the title. Whilst Vettel would lead the title for most of that season, at least in the first half of the season, Kimi would play a rear gunner role for the team, all of which would turn out to be in vain when the infamous incident of Singapore occurred. As a Ferrari fan, it was horrible to see. Kimi was out, and then Vettel was going backwards down the track and then spinning from his own oil coming from the rear of his car. That for me was when many people, including myself, felt that Ferrari and Vettel had lost the title. This would add pressure on Sebastian, and through 2018 he would be both very successful, but also he would equally struggle with his own self-inflicted issues. Raikkonen for me would prove to be the far stronger driver throughout 2018. Both Sebastian and Kimi would score 11 podiums each in 2018, and a major highlight would be a pole position in front of the Tifosi at the Italian Grand Prix for Kimi Raikkonen. Kimi was, in my opinion, a far stronger driver in 2018, but with Ferrari's president Sergio Marchionne eyeing to replace the Finn with rookie Charles Leclerc before sadly passing away during the 2018 season, Ferrari would choose to honour the man by respecting his decision to sign Leclerc despite Kimi's upturn in form. Kimi's major highlight would be his first victory since 2013 with a win at the 2018 USA Grand Prix, making him the record holder for the largest gap between victories. Myself, as a huge fan of Kimi Raikkonen, actually watched the event at a bar in Valencia, and this was my reaction to him winning.
Oh my god!
Since 2018, Kimi has gone on to be the lead driver at Alfa Romeo in 2019 and 20, and he's still doing what he calls a hobby in 2021. With both those explanations said, I feel Fernando's entry back into F1 is his hunger for another title, but I wholeheartedly believe that both Michael and even Kimi believe they would be able to claim another title for when they return to the sport. When they made the decision to return to Formula 1, I don't think it would have been without them thinking that they would have been able to be at the ability that they had prior, which is what is worrying for Fernando. My prediction is Fernando would try to push Alpine to fully focus on 2022. That's something that's been said publicly, but they need to give him a car to challenge for the title very early on. That is just how Fernando works. And if this fails, then the team will be a stepping stone as he tries to throw himself into the picture of potentially joining Mercedes or Red Bull. And whilst that seems very far-fetched, who would have predicted at the start of the 2020 season that Perez would join Red Bull in 2021? And McLaren's Zach Brown believes it will be George Russell and Max Verstappen at Mercedes in 2022. Either way, I think Fernando's return will be an amalgamation of Schumacher's and Raikkonen's. I think Ocon will be more of a threat to Fernando than Van Dorn was to him in 2018. I'm not sure Ocon can mirror what Rosberg did to Michael, but I also think that Fernando will be able to fight for podiums with Alpine, like Kimi did for Lotus. Does he have the ability to win another title though? Only time will really tell. In my personal opinion, I don't think he has it, but I also feel like he is a driver that is always able to surprise us.
Hey guys, this is my 1 minute outro, which is like a personal touch, just to have like an unscripted discussion with you guys. I just want to quickly say thank you for everyone who's watched this. This is my return to YouTube, first time in 6 years, on the same platform of which I used to do travel videos and whatnot, and my vlogs. I'm now doing Formula 1, so I've got around 10,000 subscribers right now. I'm expecting some of you to unsubscribe, and obviously there'll be new subscribers, but I just want to say a big thank you to my housemate Samuel. He has a YouTube account named Ski. I'm going to link that in the description below. Without him, I probably wouldn't have been inspired to return to YouTube, and without him, I certainly wouldn't have been able to get this video out. So it's a big thank you to him, and a massive thank you to anyone who's watched this. I'm so happy to be back. I'm hoping that you guys would have enjoyed this, and yeah, it's meant a lot to me. It's been real fun doing this, so thank you very much once again. If you want to subscribe and see more, then please do. Thank you guys.